Be honest. Do you always know the differences between these words? Advanced English speakers know the differences. By the end of this video, you will too. It's fairly common to get pain in these areas, but is it an acute pain or a chronic pain? An acute pain is something that occurs quickly, can be strong, but doesn't last a long time. If I say, she has acute chest pains, that means chest pains came quickly, suddenly, can be quite painful, but we're not expecting them to last for the rest of your life. But with a chronic pain, this is something that lasts a long time and gets worse slowly. If I say he has chronic back pain, that means this back pain has been there for a long time and it's not necessarily very strong, but it causes problems over and over again, weeks, months, years. Is your weather looking like this today? You could say we are experiencing adverse weather conditions. But what's the difference between adverse and averse? Well, adverse means against or opposite or negative. So these weather conditions are negative. But averse means a repulsion or a dislike of something, usually followed with the word to. For example, I am averse to uncooked seafood. Do you need to go to bed yet? Perhaps someone's telling you to make a phone call and you respond, it's too late to make a phone call. Anyway, I need to go to bed now. Now, why did I use anyway as one word rather than any way as two words? Well, the difference is with anyway as one word, you add an extra point or change the subject when you use it. But when you split it into two words, it means one out of all the options available. For example, is there any way in which you can help me? Any way means just one of the various ways that are possible. Have you been to the cinema recently? Have you watched a film or a movie that made you cry? If it did, you could say the sad film affected me. But why did I say affected rather than affected with an E at the beginning? It's because affect is a verb, effect with an E is a noun. So I would say the sound effects in the latest movie were amazing. And here effects is with an E at the beginning because it's in the noun position. So both mean one thing impacting another, but affect is the verb and effect is the noun. It's important to point out, though, because of the rules of English where we weaken vowels that are not the stressed syllable, this means that effect, if said quickly, can sound just like affect when it's spoken. So in spoken English, you may not notice the difference, but in written English, you have to distinguish between the a and the e. It's lovely to see a baby sleeping in bed. And a few days before this, a baby girl was born last night. This is born, B-O-R-N, but there's also a born which has an E afterwards, B-O-R-N-E. What's the difference? Well, look at the picture of this building and what holds the weight of a building? Well, the weight of the tall building was borne by its foundation. So at the bottom of a building, we have foundations and buildings are on top of it and the foundations take the weight. And here, born with the E at the end is used because born with the E at the end means carry, or it can mean produce, usually with effort. So with the foundations, they have to be strong to carry the weight of the building. No entry sign. Why is this? Well, perhaps it's because the meeting is private. You cannot attend, the meeting is private. What's the difference between cannot as one word and cannot when they are two words? Well, when you're speaking, it's difficult to hear the difference. But if it's written down, there can be a difference. For example, you may attend, but you can not attend if you'd prefer. So cannot, all as one word, means no ability or not allowed. But can not, as two separate words written down, means the ability to choose not to do something. Now, because of the problems distinguishing between the two in speaking, It's advised not to use can, not separated when you're trying to speak. Perhaps don't have to would be an easier phrase to understand in spoken English. Here's an orchestra, and the words compose and comprise could be used to describe the orchestra, but in different ways. What about compose? The famous conductor has composed a new symphony. Compose is about creating or a whole item made of parts. So if you compose a new symphony, that means you create a new piece of music. And this piece of music is made up of many different parts. Comprise, though, focuses on the parts themselves. The orchestra is comprised of a number of different musicians. So comprise is focusing on the different parts here, the different musicians. It introduces the parts that make the whole. And if you're finding this lesson useful, try visiting my new website where there's lots more you can learn. It has details of my courses, PDFs, and you can book a tutorial with me to explore any English topic, including the one in this lesson now, further with me privately. There's a link to my website in the description below this video. Sometimes things are delivered one by one rather than all together. And this is the meaning of discreet, but that's discreet ending ETE. The delivery of your furniture will be in discrete packages. And when it finishes ETE, this means items that are separate from others. But when it finishes EET, the pronunciation is the same, but this means quietly or carefully or secretly. For example, we entered in a discreet manner so no one would notice us. Remember back to being at school. How did the teacher get you to speak? Well, they probably elicited. The teacher got the students to speak by eliciting answers. And elicit means getting information out of others. Perhaps she asked a question that forced the students to reply. It's quite different to elicit. Elicit means not allowed or morally unacceptable. For instance, my country considers romantic expression in films to be illicit content. Maybe your country is like that. We often have problems with our cars, and we have to make sure we fix them properly before we can drive them. To talk about fixing your car, perhaps use the word ensure. You must ensure your car is fixed before it goes on the road. But ensure is quite different to insure. Insure means make certain, but insure means pay money to someone who will cover the cost of a large bill. You must insure your car in case you have an accident. So insure, insurance, this is money that you pay once a year or every month to a certain company, and then if something goes badly wrong with your car, your insurance company will pay the bill for you. Now, the stress here is on sure each time. Insure and insure. When you say them quickly, because the first syllable is not stressed, they sound almost the same. But remember the difference in meaning, particularly if you're writing them. En means make certain. In is to do with what you pay so that someone will cover your bill. It's always a shame to see people arguing like this. Maybe you've got parents who argue. And perhaps you're in a situation where your brother or sister tells you, our parents are arguing. And they also warn you this: don't exacerbate things by arguing with them yourself. On the other hand, they might say this: I'm exasperated by my parents. They're always arguing. So we have exacerbate and exasperate. Exacerbate means make a bad situation worse. If you exacerbate things by arguing, then perhaps the argument will get louder and longer, and that makes it worse. But exasperated is to do with your feelings. You feel frustrated and upset because of a situation that's lasted a long time. This person has a long way to walk. But would they say they have much further or farther to walk? How much farther do we need to travel? Well, I need further information before I can answer that. Now, this is confusing because the words can mean the same. They can both mean a greater distance. But further has additional meanings. Further can be used to mean a greater distance in a non-physical sense as well. And it also means in addition. And in this example, it means in addition. I need information before I can answer that in addition to what I already know. I need further information. Has anyone ever come to your workplace or college with a car like this? Why would they do that? Well, first of all, perhaps they shouldn't be parking there, in which case he flouted the company rules that banned cars from parking outside. Now, flout means ignore rules, but flaunt means display something to get a reaction, which is what this person may have done here. He flaunted his expensive new car in front of his work colleagues. In other words, he let them see it so that they would perhaps be jealous or react in some way. Have you ever written a letter to someone that was really important? Well, in that case, you probably wrote formally. Perhaps this lady asked for a pay rise formally in a letter to the managers. Now, formally means in a professional or proper way. It's different to formally, where it's an ER in the middle rather than the AL. Formally with ER has the same pronunciation, but this means how something or someone was in the past. Before her promotion, she was formally the CEO's assistant. How have the sales figures been for your company recently? Perhaps they've gone up. You might use imply or infer to help you talk about this. Now, both of these things mean that one thing suggests another, but there's slightly different usage in why we would use imply or infer. Let's look at imply first. The good results imply that our sales strategy was successful. When we use imply, then the cause leads to something. The cause implies something. So the results created the cause themselves here. But with infer, perhaps we could use this example. By studying the results, we can infer that the sales strategy was successful. Notice the difference in the subject. With infer, the subject was we infer, and we infer something based upon the results. But with imply, the results was the subject itself. So infer is when someone studying the cause comes to a certain conclusion. Someone studying the cause infers something. This person is obviously late, but should we use late or lately? Late means after the expected time, but lately means before now, although it does mean recently. You mustn't arrive late or you'll miss the most important part. So here it's late, you mustn't arrive after the expected time. But you haven't been arriving on time lately. Here, lately means before now. So recently, perhaps yesterday, the day before, they arrived late. But this was the situation lately. This was the situation recently. So lately does not mean after now. Lately actually means before now. Only late means after the expected time. Perhaps you've driven in parts of the world where you see something like this. You see a river and then you see a little hill, or sometimes we call a bank, that keeps the river in place, that keeps the river from flowing into the land. Now this can be called a levy. This levy prevents the river from flowing onto the land. And a levy is a hill that keeps water from overflowing. But there's another word that has the same pronunciation but with a different meaning. Levy with a Y at the end. There is a levy to pay when you bring expensive goods into this country. In other words, a levy with a Y is a tax. Are you the person in the house who puts these down on your table? If so, you could say, before dinner, I usually lay the knives and forks on the table. L-A-Y, lay, with this spelling means to put something down horizontally. What's the difference between this and lie? Well, lie means the sentence subject itself is down horizontally. For example, after dinner, I usually lie down on the sofa for a rest. So I am the person or the thing here which is horizontal and down. So that's the slight difference between lay and lie. Lay, you put it down. Lie, you are down. Lots and lots of carrots. Very good for you. But sometimes parents say strange things to children if they eat too much of something. Maybe like this. When I was a child, my parents perpetuated an idea that eating carrots would turn me orange. Did that happen to you? I hope not. But here, perpetuate means to keep something going. So this idea was repeated again and again and again, maybe for years. Perpetuate, keep something going. It's different to perpetrate. Perpetrate means carry out a planned action. The criminals were intending to perpetrate a robbery at the farm. It's often used in this context where someone is breaking rules. Reading books can make a big difference to our lives. And if this book made a difference to this child's life, they might say this: I've just read a book that has given me a fresh perspective on life. Perspective means a way of thinking or vision. But it's different to prospective because prospective means happening in the future. For instance, the prospective tenants of the property move in next week. Prospective tenants, these are the tenants, or the tenants means people who rent a property and they are moving in the future because they're prospective with the O. Exams are coming up, but have you done your revision? Your teacher might say this: for homework, I am giving you exam practice. Please practice answering the exam questions for homework. What's the difference between these two? Well, first of all, I should point out it depends in what part of the world you're speaking. In the UK, follow these rules. Practice CE is the noun and practice with ISE at the end is the verb. But in America, practice ICE is the standard for all writing. And because of the influence of America, this is becoming more and more common in other parts of the world too. When you go to your doctor, do they recommend that you take medicine? If that's the case, then they probably prescribe it. The doctor prescribed some medicine for my cold. And prescribe means recommend. Normally a bit more formally. Normally they write something down for you and they say, go and get this medicine. They prescribe it. Proscribe, again, because of the weakening of vowels, can sound very similar. But when there's an O instead of the E in the spelling, this means forbid. The doctor prescribed physical exercise until I recover. Do not do any physical exercise. I forbid it. I prescribe it. AI, people say, is going to take over the world. And it causes difficulty for people trying to mark essays in schools, colleges, universities. And if you're in a college or university, you'll probably see some instructions like this. Do not use AI in your essays. This principle must be followed by everyone. Now, principle, when it finishes PLE, means commonly followed rule or belief. But principle, finishing PAL, although it sounds the same, has a different meaning. This means the main thing, or sometimes it can mean the academic head in a college or university. The principal idea in the essay was that AI will change society. So here it's the main idea. Have you ever ridden on a horse? What do you hold? You hold these things called reins. But there are different spellings of rein. The first one is what you see in the picture. The rider held onto the horse by the reins, those things that you hold behind the horse that mean you don't fall off or you could use to guide the horse. But King Charles reigns over the United Kingdom. Same pronunciation, but GN at the end. And this is to do with a king or queen having power over a nation. What do we call all of the things you can see on the screen here? Well, we call them stationary. But the trouble is, again, there are two words that have the same sound but different spelling. The first example contains ERY, and this means things connected with writing. You may take as much stationery into your exam as you wish. A way of remembering this is that paper finishes with ER. So ER in paper and ER at the end of stationery for the things connected with writing that you can see on the screen here. But if it finishes ARY, this means something that's not moving, often to do with traffic. There was so much traffic on the road that everything was stationary. It was not moving. And if you want to carry on learning further with me, go to my new website, scroll through it and find out all the different ways that I can help you improve your English. Click on the link in the video description below this screen